Hi, it's Amy and Tim from GoWithLess. We have such exciting news. Thanks to our friends and family and their sharing amongst their friends and family, we hit our 100 subscribers on YouTube. So that meant that we could get a better URL versus some like mumbo jumbo alphanumeric.
Thank you for subscribing.
So thank you if you're a subscriber. We appreciate it. Also, if you ever leave a comment, we reply to all comments. So we really appreciate and love comments. With that being said, we're going to get right into how we retired in our 40s, part 9. And we're going to take a little, this isn't necessarily going to be exactly our story, but it's important to talk about this, about your house. One of our colleagues by the name of Scott Trench works for Bigger Pockets here in Denver. And we heard him on one of our favorite podcasts. It's called Choose FI. And he was talking maybe about a month or 2-3 ago about that people are talking about like frugality in small things. That didn't make as much sense.
This is an amazing guy. He's under 30 years old, by the way.
He's an amazing, he's like Yoda. So he has like wisdom of someone of like from that's hundreds of years old of experience. So he's a remarkable guy. It's a great episode to go watch. I'll actually put a link. Listen, it's not a video, it's an audio. I'll put a link to it in the notes. But anyway, so what he said in that show is that it's really about your housing costs and your transportation costs because they're the biggest.
Yeah.
They're the biggest pieces of your budget.
And he was talking specifically about a lot of people in the sort of financial independence community, including us, sort of tend to focus on the conversation is the smaller potatoes.
And that's important too.
It is important too, and certainly we believe it's important, and we have to continue to live this life that deals with the smaller potatoes. However, the big stuff...
What does that mean? We have to live this life that deals with the smaller potatoes. We have to live this life?
Okay.
Oh my God, we have to live this life.
All right.
That's crazy. Okay, we get to live this life, but we have to kind of pay attention to our spending. How's that?
Okay, I made something up. I don't know. But anyway, the idea is, so all the minutia, so after your house and your sort of transportation cost, all the minutia that comes with being frugal is discussed a lot. However, that housing cost, for us, it was something that was critically important, and so we're sort of rehashing what we talked about yesterday. And I think
with a different spin.
With a different spin, and that's sort of yesterday was sort of the
how we got out of our house,
and this is sort of more of the why we got out of our house. And so obviously this big house came with a big mortgage, and so if we didn't walk away from that big mortgage, or if we didn't sell that house, we would still be working, so we wouldn't have had the ability to have our life of much less spending. We wouldn't be able to spend $35,000 a year and have that big house. And I think the thing that also, it's not just the house, so it wasn't just leaving behind the mortgage.
A friend of mine says that her housing cost is her mortgage payment. Yeah. That's not the whole story.
That's a very small part of it. Well, it's a large part of the story. However, between utilities and between gas, electricity, water,
homeowners insurance, property taxes, HOA fees, buying furniture to furnish a bigger house,
taking care of a yard if you own a yard, taking care of a bigger yard if you have a bigger yard. All of these things come with an expense. And I think we mentioned this in the video before. It also seemed like every time we had a project in the house, if we wanted to upgrade something, the costs were astronomical. I think people would just walk into the house and say, well, these people can afford it, and they're going to pay a 20% premium just because they have a big house. And so there's a cost associated with a house that's not just the house. And some of this may be obvious to you, and so I don't know that it necessarily was. I think as we started running the numbers, we thought some of the utilities and things like that would factor in a little bit, but actually these things were substantial. So
they were.
Our tax bill, our tax bill.
There's your Texan.
There's my Texan is certainly lower. I mean, all of our bills are lower. We got our electricity bill today. Our electricity bill today was $56.
It used to be $450 a month. Now it's $56.
Yeah.
And during the winter, and I used to have to wear a hat in the house. So I used to, in our old house, paying $450 a month. I used to keep it at 64 during the day and 60 at night. Our house was freezing. I would be wearing, like, me and the children would be dressed in winter, like, outdoor clothing in the house because we couldn't possibly consider paying more than $450. So when we talk about we used to think we were frugal, that's an example. So even though we used to spend $115,000, we were wearing hats in the house. Like, people who are living large aren't doing that kind of thing. And before we wrap up, I did want to mention this whole concept of a starter house. So that kind of goes in with the housing. So just because you can afford a bigger house doesn't mean you need to get the bigger house. Right. So you can stay in your starter house, which I'm not so crazy about that term starter house, because get a house that makes sense for the space that you need. So if it means that you have grown out of your house and you need another house, okay, great, get a house that fits what you need. But just to have a starter house that you have to upgrade as soon as, like upgrade to a new, bigger, better, fancier, more expensive house because you got a raise or
if you have that starter house for investment reasons, so if you want to move to a different house because the starter house is going to become an investment, that's one thing. You're going to turn into a rental property. I'm talking
lifestyle inflation.
And something else, and I think we might have mentioned this yesterday, and it's just worth mentioning, at least in my opinion again, is that, so for us, so real estate, my stepfather used to say all the time, they don't make any more land, suggesting that just buy real estate because it's always going to appreciate in price, and so you're never going to lose money. It's always a great idea to own real estate. And so certainly this property we're in now, the rental property, was a good investment for us. But Amy and I, between us, we've owned 4 or 5 different houses throughout our lives between us, and it's never been a good thing.
We've never made money.
Substantial money.
No, I've never made any money.
We know a ton of people who would say that they've done great with real estate.
Yes, many. Almost all the people.
Yeah.
Not us.
Not us, for whatever reason. So even though real estate is a great idea for many, it just hasn't been something that was that we were suited for whatever reason. And
also with the more house, the more, it was also more stress for us. So moving to a smaller space was less. So we take an hour. So we used to have our house professionally cleaned because it was a big, giant pain in the buttola. And so our new house takes us about an hour and a half, both of us. Actually, when we're both doing it together, the whole house takes us about an hour together.
There was a never-ending list of projects. Always and
that's
something
not even
to
I
do
mentioned. We
with
didn't
the
really
house.
talk. The yard was like every single weekend was just yard work constantly. So Tim went away Tuesday through Friday. He'd come home and do yard work. Our kids were grown. Our dog had passed away. We weren't even using this yard. So having all this, we weren't in our yard. So that was a lot of effort. So anyway, thank you for watching. We will be back tomorrow with part 10, resuming the frugal life in our 40s. And we appreciate that you are watching. Please comment. Please subscribe. Please share. Thanks so much.
Take care.